lose. This is what I came here to do. I walk that wire and I take that step. Won't look down, got no regrets. Won't look down, got no regrets. I was made for this. I was made for this. Born in the wild, formed in the fire, built for the battle. Oh, I was made for this. I was made for this. Mind over matter, silence the doubters. I have the power. Oh, I was made for this. All my bones are dislocated, I just keep on wandering along. Got this falling over and since then I have been everything you want. Everything complete, everyone we're trying to master. Close the gate and buckle up, more gasoline is everything we want.
Hello, everybody. I think we are live. Yes, it looks like we are. Awesome. Look, we already have hearts and thumbs up. What's happening in this world? So thanks for joining me tonight. The video you just saw is my sponsor, MinutemenCoffee.com. Remember, if you order coffee from MinutemenCoffee.com, which you should always order coffee from, they're the sponsor of the show. If you enter the promo code CULP, all capital letters, you'll get 15% off if you order 2 pounds or more. So the reason I'm having this show on tonight instead of Tuesday is because I was invited over to Skagit County to be the keynote speaker at high school graduation in Skagit County. So had a great time over there, but that's why I didn't have the show on Tuesday, and we're having it tonight. And there was some information I wanted to get out right away. So I've got a lot to cover, so let's get right to it, okay? So I listen to Todd Herman on 770 KTTH regularly. Todd Herman is a nationally known conservative talk show host. I'm sure many of you have heard him. I've been a guest on his show. Well, yesterday he had Senator John Braun on his show as a guest. Senator Braun is a senator from Washington State. He's the leader of the Republican Party in the state Senate. And I'm not going to say a whole lot about it right now. I'm going to play this interview for you so that you can hear what we have for leadership in the Washington State Republican Party in the Senate. So I'm going to share this screen with you, and hopefully you will have the audio. So if you don't have, let me open this comment box up here. If you don't have audio on this, let me know right away.
Hey, it's Todd Herman here. Thank you so much for downloading and listening to the podcast. We all have to give a big thanks to the podcast sponsor, American Crawl Space and Pest Services. Of course, in addition to sponsoring and providing this podcast, American Crawl Space and Pest Services provides homes and businesses with custom solutions to pest control issues, damaged, wet, and soiled insulation, and so much more. Find out more at AmericanCrawl.com. Now, let's get to the podcast.
I'm Annalisa, a teacher in Washington. As we emerge from the pandemic, we need smaller class sizes so every child gets support to learn. Nurses and mental health counselors in every school. We need more educators meeting the needs of students. Paid for by WEA.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and I am thankful and glad within it. And these are the times in which God has decided we shall live. Times such as these, we do have unique responsibilities within these times. My responsibility is relatively easy. Talk show host, not as hard as being a state senator. Senator John Braun joins us on the Todd Herman Show. He is the Senate Republican leader. May I call you John, or you prefer to be called Senator?
I prefer to be called John, so go ahead.
I would too. I appreciate that. John, how do you describe the overall stakes in our country, our state, and our cities? I mean, there's the political equilibrium, the left versus right, but it seems so much bigger than that these days. How do you describe the stakes in our country and the state of Washington as well?
Well, I guess I characterize it two in somewhat different ways. There are certainly a lot of folks on the far right, or maybe even not on the far right, just outlying on the Republican side that are pulling us apart. And there's the same folks on the left that are really pulling the left in a direction I think is bad for the country. And they're very noisy, just to put it plainly. But I still have a lot of faith in the core, regardless of party, who are focused really on their families, their communities, their jobs. They have a political position, but it's not the thing that defines them. I think that group still exists in the U.S., but frankly, we got to do a better job of reaching them. We got to do a better job of showing them that we're looking out for the things that will make their lives better. That's really our mission on the Republican side, and not to get caught up in these wild theories, regardless of their merit, that distract us from our real job.
All right. So what kind of wild theories should we avoid?
We've had a lot of talk about elections, of course, and I'm not going to say we don't have some level of fraudulent activities in elections. We certainly do, and when it happens, we should get after it quickly and make sure we deal with it. But we shouldn't continually say that we didn't get the result we wanted because the election is broken, and I think that's a cop-out. It's like saying the ref stole the game, right?
Apparently, he's not paying attention to what's going on around the country, right? Audits in multiple states, and our Secretary of State screaming and hollering on CNN about the audit in Arizona.
We have to play a better game. We have to convince the people that we can do the right thing and will do the right thing for the state of Washington and, frankly, for our country. And if we make that case, I think not only do we have a better chance of success, we have a better chance of doing the right thing for our country.
Dino Rossi says the election was stolen from him. Is he wrong or lying?
Dino Rossi?
Mm-hmm.
In which election?
The gubernatorial election where they went through 2 recounts and then magically found a bunch of ballots.
Which election, right? Like he doesn't know.
In someone's trunk of their car and counted them, and then magically the Democrat won. Dino Rossi has been on record saying, you want to see how election fraud happens? It happened to me. Is he wrong or lying?
No, I think that's accurate. I mean, you're talking about something that happened in 2004, so we're approaching 2 decades ago, and I think that is a much closer election than what we saw in this last cycle. There was 3 recounts, and the situation did change. I think that's a different example than what folks are talking about now in Washington State in 20.
A different example, right? Dino Rossi got elections stolen, and they've been stealing elections ever since. The truth is going to come out, and he wants to be a denier. Well, I think that's a conspiracy theory that our elections have not been hacked before.
20 and nationwide in 2020.
I see. What functional changes, structural changes were made after the theft of the election from Dino?
Well, I think in that regard, our Republican Secretary of State have done a pretty good job of making sure that we have a good and accountable election system.
See, that's what the Democrats always go back to when somebody says that there's election fraud. Well, there can't be, because you have a Republican Secretary of State in Washington. She wouldn't let anything like that happen. It's a cop-out.
A perfect system, and we should be aware of that. And there's absolutely things we can do, laws we can change to make it better. But the fact is, I mean, I use the legislative district 5, and it was small double-digit difference in the final count. We did
that count in District 5 that they did, they would not let anyone get close enough to the ballots to look at them to see if they were photocopied. They wouldn't let them touch the ballots. They had to stand behind a piece of plexiglass about 10 feet away. And the election official grabbed a ballot, held it up and said, there's that one, put it down and grabbed another one. There's that one, and put it down and did another one. And when you just have a recount, of course, you're going to count the ballots that have already been counted. That's not a forensic audit. They would not allow people to look at the ballots to see if they were photocopied, to see if they had folds, because every ballot's mailed, right, in this state. They should all be folded. They wouldn't let them get close to the ballots. So again, this is another excuse.
And recount, the difference changed by one vote. So I think that at least in that case, I think there's other cases like that show it's working. I'm not sure that vote by mail is the right answer, but that's what the people have said in our state. And I think that in that case, we're doing it as well as anybody in the country.
So was there any structural changes made after Dino Rossi had the election stolen from him?
I think you're testing things. I'm not prepared to talk about detailed structural changes to the election integrity since 2004.
Okay, well, you were saying that one of our problems is people concerned with election integrity. So I was assuming that was on a basis of you understood the changes since then. But let's move on. You also mentioned some far right. I think you said far right Republicans tearing our country apart. Give me some example of far right positions or activities that concern you?
Well, I think that when you say, use the races in Washington last cycle where there were hundreds of thousands of vote difference. Absolutely, there are seem to be specific cases of fraudulent voting, but nothing on the order of 500,000. As simple as that. We should absolutely get after those, fix them. We should work on better law to give the Secretary of State better ability to crack down on fraud, but we don't have. There's none. If you magically wave a wand and eliminate all the fraudulent activity, it's not going to change the outcome. And frankly, to change the outcome, we have to win legislative majorities. So let's focus on that. Let's
focus on the next election. That's what Republicans have been doing for 40 years. Let's focus on the next, not look back. Let's not learn from our mistakes. Let's not learn from the mistakes that this senator and a lot of other mainstream Republicans did nothing in the 2020 campaign.
On how do we convince more folks to vote for us so that we have a better chance of improving the system? I don't think the system is fundamentally broken. I don't think it's perfect. And I think there's work we can do to make it better in terms of making sure that we're both getting ballots to people correctly, we're counting them, we're verifying them correctly, we're counting them correctly. All that's good stuff.
How can you count and verify votes when you don't even know who's voting? Right? You have no chain of custody in the ballots. With mail-in voting, you don't know who handles that ballot when it's mailed out. You don't know who gets it. You don't know who fills it out. And you don't know who sends it in or drops it off.
But to do that, we have to change statute. To change statute, we got to win elections, and we don't win elections by talking about the last election. We just don't. We have to prove to the people that we can do a better job for them.
Okay, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you if we want to delve back into the specifics of election fraud. For instance, you'd mentioned the national level. Maybe you're the person who understands how 5 states for the first time in American history all decided to stop voting at 4:30 in the morning, and then suddenly Joe Biden won. Who gave that order, or did that just happen happenstantially? Do you know?
Okay, we're talking about national, about election activity in other states. I am not the right person to talk about that.
Well, all right.
I read the same.
You brought that up. What you said is you said local and national. And again, I was done with the election integrity discussion. I've moved on from that because you and I are not going to agree. I don't trust the elections in Washington State for 2 seconds when I see that I don't get to look at the computer code of the company that does the counting. So sorry, you and I are going to disagree on that. Senator John Braun is with us. But you had said that right-wing positions, actually your phrase was far-right positions and far-left were tearing us apart. Is your only concern from what you determine to be the far right a concern about election integrity, or what are these? Who's a far right group tearing Washington State apart, and what for instance is a far right position?
I think what I said was I started. You're right. I said far right, and I said maybe not the far right. I said people who have controversial opinions. I think the issue is that we have people, frankly, in both parties who want to talk about very specific controversial issues that are
Controversial issues like voter integrity, right? Spineless, squishy Republicans. That's the problem. We expect this kind of crap from the Democrats.
pulling us in two different directions. For the Republicans to be successful, here's it's not a mystery. We've been pretty successful in rural Washington. Our principles line up pretty well in rural Washington. We've not been successful in recent years in suburban Washington, and we just don't have enough people in rural Washington to win a majority. So we have to find issues that will attract people in suburban Washington, and I think those have to do with making sure that we're properly funding education, that we're providing good paying jobs for their families, that we're providing for housing is a big issue right now, and then I think foundationally we need to make sure we're keeping our finances in good order. We have a budget that's sustainable and that is achievable without new taxes.
Are you guys hearing this? And I see the comments about the volume. I can't change the volume on this. So hopefully you can be close to your speakers when he's talking. But are you hearing the things that he thinks that Washington Republicans and voters in general are concerned with? You hearing this?
I think we need to focus on those issues. And it's not that folks on the far right or the far left are necessarily opposed to those. Well, on the far left, I think they are, but on the far right are opposed to it. That's just not what they're focused on. And we need to be focused on that if we're to win enough people to win a majority. And we're not going to change the issues anybody on the right side of the aisle is concerned about unless we get a majority. We're going to continue to get outvoted unless we win elections. And to win elections, we got to focus on kind of bread and butter.
We're going to continue losing in this state and other states unless we have election integrity. That's what he's going all around that. He's using the Democrat narrative.
Other kitchen table issues.
Okay, so I'm still lost in what far right means, but we can put that aside. Senator John Braun is with us. We'll do a quick check of traffic with right-way traffic. Senator John Braun is with us, Republican leader in the Senate in Washington State. You were talking about this challenge Republicans have in the urban areas, and you were saying that some of your ideas are to make sure that we are properly funding the schools, that providing housing. I guess we'll have to unpack that. I would ask you this. In this last year, did the Democrats allow 2 domestic terror groups to run wild in downtown Seattle and to seize 6 blocks? Do you think did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you're referring to the activity that last summer having to do with the autonomous zone on Capitol Hill, I don't think there's any question that happened. It's well reported.
Okay, so you agree that Black Lives Matter Incorporated and Antifa are 2 domestic terror groups?
I didn't say that. I said that they ran wild. It created an autonomous zone in downtown, on Capitol Hill in Seattle.
Okay, how would you describe Antifa and Black Lives Matter Incorporated?
Enormously harmful in their tactics is how I would describe them.
Just their tactics?
Harmful in their tactics, right? They're both domestic terrorist organizations. They want to tear apart the family. They're a bunch of liberals, far left liberals, socialists that are tearing apart this country. And the people at the top are getting rich.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What were some of the animating ideas of Black Lives Matter Incorporated? What are some of their goals?
I guess I'm a little bit surprised, Todd. I was invited on here to talk about redistricting. Instead, we're talking
you weren't.
about
No, actually, you weren't. I've never wanted to talk about redistricting. I don't know where you heard redistricting.
I have an email that invited me this morning to talk about redistricting, so that's where I heard
Alex.
it.
Oh, Alex is going to check the email because, Senator, I have no interest in redistricting. I don't trust the election outcome. Why would I trust redistricting? I would just assume that as a state senator talking about winning elections in an urban area, you might have, for instance, on the back of your hand, the fact that Black Lives Matter Incorporated seeks the destruction of the nuclear family.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm a realist. I don't think there's we have not been successful largely in urban areas in quite a while. I don't think that's how we get back to a majority. So I'm not particularly focused on winning in urban areas, at least large urban areas like downtown Seattle. I'm focused on winning in the suburbs and some of the, maybe I guess you could include some of the smaller urban areas around the state. As we look around the issues, I mean, what happened in downtown Seattle last year was still happening in some cases in Seattle and Portland is unacceptable. It should be unacceptable. I've put out numerous statements saying that's unacceptable. But when you look at the polling, when you ask people what they care about today, that's not how.
Oh, let's look at the polling, right? The pollsters are telling him what to think.
How they're deciding to vote. It's not that it's not an issue. It's just not the top issue. The top issues are the ones I mentioned earlier. And I think that's what we should be trying to solve. That's how you win elections.
Yeah, well, this not worked. So you guys you're not winning elections. So that's not worked. What I was going to say about the basis from coming from downtown Seattle and two domestic terror groups running wild, and I know I disagree on that labeling. I'm happy to discuss it. Is that now you have a lawless environment in Western Washington, Senator Braun. Jay Inslee is a lawless man. Bob Ferguson is a lawless man. We have sex trafficking, and this was your candidate for Attorney General who brought this to my attention, a 2,000% increase in sex trafficking in Washington state. I don't see Republicans running on that. I'm not certain that sex trafficking is all that popular anywhere but outside of downtown Seattle. We have record level property crime leaking over from Seattle into Renton, into Bellevue, into Des Moines. We have record level murders. We have which the media wants to call gun violence. We have a perverse pornographic sex ed in the schools, which is a winning issue everywhere it's talked about except downtown Seattle. And I'm hearing bread and butter, fund the schools, provide housing. Do we not, am I wrong that confronting two lawless men, Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson, is a win in suburbia?
See, this is what spineless politicians do all the time. They want to stay right in the cushy middle. They don't want to take a stand against anything or for anything. They just want to spew BS and get as many votes as they can and help their buddies out when they get in office.
That's not what I said.
I know it's not what you said. No, John, I know that's not what you said. That's what I said. I'm asking you, do you think that's a winning issue?
We've been very clear and we've been very on our opposition to the positions and the actions of both the governor and the attorney general. I'm not supporting them. I've opposed them at every turn. We'll continue to do that. But I don't think that changes people's minds in suburbia. I think that that's our obligation to do that. That's what we're elected and hired to do, and we have and will continue to do that. I'm not sure that changes the outcome in suburbia, frankly. I don't.
Wow.
I think. I mean, you look at you use the example of the sex ed bill. I strongly opposed that bill in the legislature. We worked to support the referendum, but the fact is the referendum, passed. The law was passed.
Listen to what Todd says next carefully.
Sure. When you have a system where you vote, where you vote for something to get it on the ballot and then vote against it later. Yeah, I know. And I appreciate you jumping on after we brought attention to the sex ed bill, because it was my information you guys intended to let that pass until my show drew attention to the pornography involved in it.
Yep.
I guess where I'm trying to get back to, Senator, is you were talking about not winning urban areas. And I am just dumbfounded because I take calls every day or texts every day from people who live in urban areas saying, now it's my neighbor's house that got broken into. Now it's my car that got stolen. Now it's a shooting on my street. You literally think Republicans can't win seats by going to these suburban areas like Renton and saying, how do you like Bob Ferguson and Jay Inslee's lawlessness? Honestly, you don't think that's a winning issue?
No, actually, I think in that case you're right. I think you're consistent. I'm not sure it.
Yeah, he's right, and he's consistent because he has a backbone, for God's sakes.
Is a top issue, but I think it will be the top issue in the next couple of years. We've seen just incredible changes here. As an example, over the last year, as a result of COVID, we've let over 3,000 inmates, 18,000 inmates in our state just over a year ago. We let over 3,000 out as a result of COVID. They passed the Democrats passed over strong Republican opposition passed the graduated reentry bill that's going to let over almost that same amount out over the next year in supervision. So 40% of our inmates from 2020 to 2022 are going to be out on the streets. Absolutely, you're going to see a continued increase in property crime, continued increase, I worry, in violent crime. And yes, people absolutely care about that, and we absolutely have opposed that. And I think you're right, it's a good issue. I don't know that is, when you do polling, I'm not sure that one raises to the top now, but I agree with you. I think it will be at or near the top in the very.
Again, he's back to the polling and talking about in the future. Well, what about right now? What about right now? Crime of all kinds is up in the state. They've been letting thousands of prisoners out for the last couple of years.
Near future, and we should absolutely oppose that, both because it's the right thing to do and because politically, I think people are going to vote based on that outcome.
Okay, so Senator Braun, then we started by a topic of the stakes, and I want to return to that. I do want to clarify. Alex has checked our emails. We didn't send you anything about redistricting. I don't trust the election outcomes in the state, so I'm not going to focus on redistricting. So I trust that was a miscommunication. It certainly didn't come from our side. I would just ask you this, Senator Braun. And I will contend that the Democrat Party, with their helpers, Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson, are purposely releasing felons into our society to destabilize this state and this nation. Am I wrong?
Now, what he just said right there is it's being purposely done, right? And I believe that is true. It's not just happening in Washington state. They're not just allowing this lawlessness to go on. They're not just allowing prisoners to be released from prison early just in Washington state. It's happening in every Democrat state. This isn't the only place where illegal aliens have sanctuary. This isn't the only place where we don't know if illegal aliens are the ones voting. We have no idea because our elections are so full of holes that you can't even ask someone if they're a Washington state citizen or a citizen of the United States. You go get a driver's license with a utility bill, and you get registered to vote, whether you're a U.S. citizen or not.
I think, I don't think they're purposely doing to destabilize. I think that's the outcome. I think, to a certain extent, they believe that's the right policy. It's a terrible policy. We're going to fight the policy, but I don't know that I come to the conclusion that they're purposely trying to destabilize us. That doesn't the two don't necessarily, one doesn't mean the other, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to defend them. You're jumping to a certain conclusion. I'm just saying it's wrong. We got to oppose it. If we want to stop it, we got to win elections.
So he doesn't think that the Democrats, the socialists, the far left, the communists that are in the Democrat Party, he doesn't think that this stuff is being done purposely. It's all being orchestrated. It is absolutely purposely. All the Democrats in the red states got together and they talked about how to lock down, how to shut down, what to do. And they all did the same thing. They followed each other.
I guess I would say this, Senator, having been a keen political observer all my life and having worked in this job for the past 8 years, when I watch the handing out of needles that were supposed to be an exchange fail to stop any heroin addiction, when I watch the don't do harm and redress of harm tactics and reduce harm leading to more heroin injection sites, when I see no youth jails leading to record level gang violence and record level rapes in Seattle, in Mayor Jenny's Seattle, when I watch 2 domestic terror groups allowed to take over Washington state's major cities, Seattle 6 blocks thereof, when I watch a domestic terror group, the John Brown Gun Club, attempt to murder federal agents in Tacoma, and Bob Ferguson does nothing, not even a hint of an investigation. I have not jumped to a conclusion. I've come to the conclusion by keen observation, that the Democrats, everything they're doing is destabilizing. Therefore, I read that to be their policy. But in any case, you and I may differ on the degree on that. Let me ask you this. You guys talk a lot about being in the minority. That's true. How many seats do you need to lead the Senate?
We need to pick up 4 seats. We're at 21. The other side has 28. There's 49 total. 25 is the majority. We need 4.
Okay, so 4 would be a tie, or 4 would be would put you in the lead?
No, 4 would put us at 25-24 in the majority.
Okay.
Now, I would tell you, I think if we pick up fewer than that, there's potential. We have a couple folks on the other side of the aisle that are with us on some issues. So there's a huge opportunity to change some of the outcomes, but a true majority needs 25 in the Senate.
All right, so I would regard then anything less than 4 as a failure. Is that fair?
No, I think that we are not likely to just turn the switch and say. I mean, every time we pick up a seat, I send out a win. You got to stop saying it's all or nothing. This isn't an on or off switch. Politics stops. We got to continue to pick up seats. 25 is where we want to be, but frankly, we like to be at 26 or 27. But right now we're at 21, and 22 is better than 21. 23 is better than 22. 24 is better than 23, and 25 is better than 24. So every move in the right direction is positive.
All right, I appreciate the clear answer on that. Senator John Braun's been with us. He's the Senate leader for the Republicans in Washington State. Appreciate you coming on, Senator, and go with God's good grace.
All right, have a good day. Bye.
I'm Ann.
Okay, you guys. That should be turned off. Quite the interesting conversation, right? Unbelievable. I mean, spineless Republicans really piss me off, right? We expect Democrats, the socialist Democrats, to act like that. But we expect Republicans to have a backbone. Spineless Republicans always play defense. They always try to stay in the middle, like Senator Braun just did in that interview. And they like pollsters to tell them what to think and how to vote instead of talking to we the people or reading the Constitution, right? If they read the Constitution, they could find out what they should do. We know how accurate polls are. They aren't. If politicians would get out and talk to real people like you and me, instead of relying on polling, they would know what we the people are concerned with. If they would dust off the Constitution once in a while, they would know what their job limits are. Election integrity is the most important thing right now in this country, followed by border security, crime, and government overreach. I don't need a pollster to tell me that. If we don't have integrity in our elections, then we don't have a country, period. If we don't have secure borders, then we don't have a country either. If we don't get politicians who follow the Constitution and their oath of office, then we don't have a country. Congressman Newhouse, who I'm running against in the 4th District, was recently down at the southern border. Why was he down at the southern border? Well, he was down at the southern border because the voters are very conservative in the 4th District in Washington, and he's trying to get votes. But the interesting thing about his newfound border security concerns is that he joined with liberal Democrats and sponsored a bill to give illegal immigrants citizenship. Yes, he did. He joined a very small group of Republicans who voted with the liberal Democrats to also pass the Farm Workforce Modernization Act in the House. There were about 30 Republicans who voted for it, and Newhouse was one of them. By the way, voting against the majority of Republicans and 2 Democrats. So there's even Democrats that have more sense than Newhouse. So he also voted for the American Dream and Promise Act, which will give illegal residents status, illegal border crossers resident status, about 2 million of them. Newhouse is at the border acting like he's concerned about the flood of drugs, human trafficking, and terrorism and crime that's coming across the border. But then he votes to incentivize more people to come here. This is how politicians work. They talk a good game, but then turn around and stab we the people in the back. Just like Newhouse did when he joined Nancy Pelosi and the liberal left when they voted to impeach President Trump for doing nothing wrong. With your help, I'm going to see that Newhouse doesn't spend another term in Congress. I'm sick of this crap. Our country is at stake. Our freedoms are at stake. With squishy, spineless politicians in the Republican Party, It's no wonder we're marching towards socialism in this country. We are losing our constitutional republic. We are losing our country. The socialists are taking over. And spineless Republican politicians like Washington State Representative J.T. Wilcox, Mr. I'm going to sign off on the governor's lockdown because I'm getting $3.2 million in COVID relief. Washington State Senator John Braun, who you just listened to, Mr. Squishy himself. U.S. Congressman Dan Newhouse, Mr. Let's Impeach the President, and Secretary of State Kim Wyman. Miss, I don't know if I'm a Republican anymore, and this is the most secure election in history. They all stand back and watch. It's easy for these squishy, soft, mainstream Republicans to label we the people as far right when they are so far left that a solid constitutional conservative, which used to be what the Republican Party stood for, scares the hell out of them. We the people scare them because we the people are waking up. Did you notice any of those people I just mentioned out helping in 2020? While we the people were out trying to unseat the dictator in the governor's office, they stood back and watched and didn't lift a finger. That should tell you all you need to know. I would suggest sending an email to Todd Herman and thanking him for a great interview and thanking him for standing up for patriots everywhere. Thank him for standing up for we the people. Todd Herman, KTTH, you can search it. Take care, you guys. We are in a battle. Stand up for America. Stand up for the Constitution. Love you guys. Talk to you later. God bless you.